So 3.4 million and one
human.
So, I mean, I imagine you must be working 60 hours a week.
I try to work about 2 hours a day.
2 hours a day. Okay, that is an incredible per hour.
So that's where this new methodology that I developed comes in, because if you don't have a mechanism for leveraging this new way of working, unfortunately, you become obsolete.
Hey warriors, Catherine Gerald here from L Ray Search, where we connect growing and mid-market aerospace and defense leaders with game-changing talent. So what happens when space science patterns unlock the future of expertise? You are about to find out as we welcome Dr. Layla Martin, Harvard, Yale, MIT alum, and developer of the Orbit methodology. After a decade of research, she discovered that the same patterns of governing planetary movements can predict and accelerate revenue generation for subject matter experts in our AI-driven economy. Dr. Layla Martin is a space theorist and pattern recognition expert who translates natural patterns into monetization strategies. As the founder of Orbit, she helps subject matter experts transform their expertise into sustainable monthly recurring revenue in the AI-driven social selling economy. She's helped over 55 subject matter experts monetize their wisdom, founded the Layla Martin Foundation, funding over 180 women across 40 countries, and leading transformative research on pattern recognition in complex systems. Welcome, Dr. Layla.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a lot. I don't know who that lady is.
It is a pretty impressive bio.
Yeah.
So what inspired you to connect these space patterns with expertise monetization?
Well, so my beginning as an academic, I had a long time, about 10 years, doing different research and focusing on strategic approaches to space development. And specifically, I was examining how different leadership models affect long-term mission success. And I think that just kind of like naturally led to pattern recognition across complex systems. And so from all that research, I really had these like key takeaways, and I have 3 that I can share. Number 1, mission success requires diverse operational perspectives. And number 2, long-term sustainability demands comprehensive strategic planning. And number 3, the future space development needs both technical and strategic innovation.
Okay. A lot of strategic. I liked touching on the diversity of thought too. I'm going to back it up one step, even before MIT and Harvard and Yale. You were creative director in Hollywood, right?
Yes, I was.
How did this all come about?
Well, so I had children, and at that time there was no work from home option, and so I was a creative director at Warner Brothers, and I worked on Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. And before that, I was a successful model for a long time. And so I think that it's funny that you can have all of these different sort of chapters of your life. And with what I'm doing now, it kind of like they all fit together, all these like kind of odd pieces of the puzzle. So it's really exciting.
Well, I can guarantee I've never heard the model to art director to doctor in space to entrepreneur helping everybody monetize their expertise. So that is a unique journey. Hats off on that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So bring me up to speed now. We talked about diversity of thought and some of the strategic pieces that went into the academia behind how you got into the role you're in now with Orbit. And a lot of our listeners, I get a call that are saying, hey, how do I get on a board? I'm nearing retirement, or I don't want to work this many hours forever. What advice would you give to them in terms of the pathway to become a board advisor?
Well, I think that being a board advisor is definitely one path that they could go down, but in all of my research and all of my different life experiences, I've identified now that there's like a specific pattern in the market right now, and particularly for 55 and over subject matter experts. So we're looking at people really with like decades of specialized knowledge, and they're facing this like completely transformed economic landscape, and their expertise is really invaluable. But I identified a gap in the market that the mechanisms for leveraging it have completely changed. And so that's one of the reasons that I developed Orbit is I see that we have all of these subject matter experts, and they're kind of nearing retirement but not really ready to retire, and there are all these opportunities with social selling, but in order to take advantage of them, you have to build a brand and have an offer and have a community. And so it's not a really simple thing to create, but I feel like it's a really important thing to focus on, particularly because these individuals with this specialized knowledge, it would be a shame if they were just kind of stuck on a golf course or, not really sharing that and passing it down. So
Mhm.
I think part of being an academic is I have so much appreciation for people who really respect knowledge. And my celebrity crush, General Mattis.
Celebrity crush General Mattis. Okay, you can't just drop that, but I'll let you go on.
Okay, so I do. I mean, he's dreamy. I'm not kidding. So he said, if you haven't read hundreds of books, that you're functionally illiterate and that you will be incompetent because your personal experiences alone aren't broad enough to sustain you. And for me, this really captures why systematic knowledge development really matters in strategic planning. And I just I mean, I've read his book. I'm a huge fan of his, and he's really such a proponent for being an intellectual and being intelligent, and I just think that this is so interesting, particularly for the aerospace and defense community, to consider. Yeah, I just think that we're at this crossroads where there's an opportunity here, and you can see it. So I saw it and I created a solution for it.
Well, and I hear about this problem daily where we've got candidates that are in 55 or over, and they call me and they're like, I want to work for another 20 years, but nobody's going to
Yeah.
hire me because I'm not their succession candidate. I guess what advice would you give to them? People that really, love working, want to keep what they do, but aren't necessarily able to, get that next rung in the ladder because of some succession planning ideals.
Something that's really fascinating in terms of how pattern recognition from space strategy, it really applies to them, and particularly in terms of the market challenges today. So there's a recent MIT study, and it's on professional subject matter experts and how they leverage AI. And if you're an SME and you're leveraging the new technology and you really know how to do it, how to work with AI effectively, you can see a 40% increase in your productivity. But I think what's really fascinating about that
Wow.
is that, yeah, I mean, it's major.
This isn't a group that we normally think of as early adopters of AI.
No, absolutely. And so I think that it's part of this idea of taking that specialized knowledge and then adding, these new tools. And so the flip side of that research is that if you don't know how to use AI, if you're not using it the right way or the most optimized way, then your productivity decreases 19%. So you get stuck in these kind of loops.
That's a lot. That's an entire day in a 5-day work week.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think that that's what's so important is it's not just having this specialized knowledge, but what do you do with it? And I feel like this gap really represents a critical strategic opportunity. And so that's where this new methodology that I developed comes in, because if you don't have a mechanism for leveraging this this new way of working, unfortunately, you can become obsolete, which is sort of upsetting to me.
Yeah, and the flip side is you can embrace it. And you said 40% increase in rent. That's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, what are the critical shifts reshaping this expertise economy?
There are three critical shifts that I see right now, and well, there's a lot of critical shifts, but what how I like to think of them in terms of like in this context is if we consider like astronomical forces that are like they're reshaping our market. And so like I brought up, AI is definitely one of them, and it's reaching this level of sophistication where it can either, like I said in that MIT study, it can either amplify your expertise or at best it can replace parts of it, but it can also make things a lot worse and a lot harder, and you can lose time because of it. And so it entirely depends on your positioning. And then another critical shift is like the traditional revenue models, including like board positions. I mean, they exist, but they're becoming unstable as AI is really it's transforming how expertise is valued. And then the third is like, if you think about there's an increasing energy cost for late adopters. So it's kind of like if you miss a planetary launch and there's window, and it makes it like exponentially more difficult. So it's like,
yeah, get on the bus now or it's going to be hell trying to get on later.
Well, I think it's sort of difficult to really say, but yeah, it's true. It's like if the people that are the early adopters, like for me and my own life, utilizing AI, like I do have this tremendous strategic advantage, and it's part of me is like instead of being like a gatekeeper, like I want to share what I know and help improve the lives of other people instead of just like pretending that it's all me that I don't have any help. So yeah.
Yeah. So, how does one go from, full on academia into this pivot of space industry coach? What prompted you to do that? And I know I'm going to say the F word. That's kind of what your focus was on in academia, right?
Well, right. So
F word as in feminism.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we don't often like to say the the F word, but I think that
it's gotten a bad rap. I mean, yeah. Well, say that. I think so often the word itself we associate man haters with, and like it or not, that is kind of the impression I think if we, associate that word alone without context gives.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the theorist who coined the term and developed the theory of astrofeminism. And I think that that was like one of the things that I was working on in terms of all of my research.
What is astrofeminism?
Astrofeminism is a theory of change that seeks to re envision humanity's relationship with space by incorporating feminist principles and challenging the traditional way this narrative that we view space. But again, I think it's really important to clarify that astrofeminism is not like trying to knock men out of the territory or something ridiculous like that.
It's not a female only planet.
No, I think that it has to do with like strategic leadership, and again, this idea of being successful in your mission. It requires diverse perspectives, and so it's more of this idea of like, so as at Harvard I was an international relations theorist, and so I actually had a colleague that was at the Pentagon, and we were having this conversation about outer space. And even though outer space is infinite, that like Leo, Mio, and Geo are like these areas in need of protection. And I think it's also so interesting when you start to consider how much we rely on outer space for every single thing we do every day. Unless you're like a monk living in a cave, like you really rely on the services that space provides. And I just became so fascinated with this idea of like space as uh, this place in need of protection as an environment, and
Hmm.
that we rely on so heavily. And it's just such an interesting idea. And so I started doing a lot of research and found that, we have very few female founded space companies and initiatives. And again, I really try to shy away from this idea of like it's not male versus female, because it's female centric. So it's it's just something that, like, yeah, again, it's not against men or
And for most of us, our best allies in the business world and advocates have been, men.
Yeah, so I'm not going to name any names, but like the very high ranking people in aerospace and defense and at NASA were instrumental in my research and helping me develop this idea. And so, yeah, no, not at all. It's just looking at in international relations in terms of like we have hard powered priorities and we have soft powered priorities, and then the idea of those together is smart power. So yeah, just thinking about space from a smart powered perspective. And I think that there are so many different things that are happening in the space community that are smart powered. And so when I started my research in, I think like almost 10 years ago, it was very different. So I think that's a really good thing to see that like there is so much happening uh, right now that is positive and good. And I think that there's still a lot of work, to do.
Awesome. Now, in terms of orbit, how long are you into your journey? I know you've helped over 55 experts today, and I also know you have a big audacious goal that backs up, the power of AI as well. Tell me about your business and what we'll be celebrating in a year or two.
Okay, so yeah, I have a ridiculous goal. It's to make $3.4 million in the next 12 months.
That is big.
It is big, but I think that well, you might as well dream big.
Why 3.4? It seems like such a unique number. There must be a rationale for that.
Well, I think that it is. There's a personal reason, but I also feel like that if you have a goal that is not worth really thinking about and being like inspired to complete, it's like what's the point? And so I wanted to have a goal that is so ridiculous, because the way that I'm creating this wealth is not through a huge team. With Orbit, I'm not using any money towards advertising. And so it's not just a monetary goal, but it's a goal of like this idea of a lean team. So it's just myself and then using like an AI staff, so different roles that I create.
So you've got avatars working for you?
Well, yes, and so it's a project that I'm developing right now, but it's not going to put you out of business. I think that it's more looking at like staffing in terms of like AI being like a super powered like team member, and I think it's also really important to emphasize that like the AI is only as good as you program it. So you have to be able to understand how to work with it, what to explain what you want to create. And also, I think there's a tremendous amount of creativity. And that's where we go back to what we were talking about earlier is that being an art director, it's like I was used to being able to describe and explain exactly what I wanted to see. And I think that that's part of using AI is it amplifies if you're an incredibly creative person.
I'm imagining like 10 avatars behind you, all looking a little bit different,
Yeah.
with very unique personal names that you've created and coded.
Well, yeah, so it is something like that. And so it's a team of experts, it's like a team of geniuses that I've created, and it's essentially having the same um, roles you would if I had, a huge company inside of a big building, like how we all grew up with how you would run a successful business. But my idea is, again, addressing the subject matter experts, which I am one myself. I think that it's important to explain that this all came from the fact that I came out of university and I have all of these credentials, but I kind of like painted myself into a corner because I have this highly specialized knowledge. But we go into university to learn how to think, not necessarily how to earn. And I know a lot of people are kind of critical about that. And there's a lot of eye rolling with university in terms of like, you have these useless skills. But I think that being a creative thinker and being very well read, it enables me to solve a bunch of different problems. And I always go back to like how important it is to study history, because then you can recognize patterns and see kind of like what's happening. And so, yeah, I'm creating this plan, this idea at this company, but it's just me, the human, directing. I think of it as like an orchestra leader of like all these different roles.
So 3.4 million and
Human.
one human, Dr.
Yeah.
Layla.
Yeah.
So tell me how that works. I mean, I imagine you must be working 60 hours a week, because I know I've placed a few people that have hit that amount before, and you meet them, and in general, they're working their fanny off. Is that your lifestyle today, or tell me about that?
Well, no. So I'm here looking at the ocean right now for my beach house. And usually in my family, when it's low tide, we all take an hour off to go to the beach and look at the tide pools. And um, I, I usually am I try to work about 2 hours a day.
2 hours a day. Okay, that is an incredible per hour.
Uh, well,
Like
so,
ROI in terms of
yeah.
goals.
Well, I think that for me, I think that really being wealthy is having the time to do what I want with the people that I love, and the monetary wealth helps enable make that possible. But I think that a lot changed for my family during COVID, where we were all stuck inside together, and it was
Mhm.
definitely an adjustment. And then we realized at the end, like, wait, I don't want to go back to the way life was. I like being able to have my own time and to do what I care about and to be with the people that I love. And so I think that it definitely is possible, and that's why I created Orbit, to help disseminate this knowledge sharing and create like a navigation system for this expertise economy. So it's 12 modules engineered and like bringing in space science. And I really tried to create it too, because after going through academia for so long, and it was like going through a meat grinder, it was horrible. It was a terrible experience that I wouldn't try to have anyone go through.
You'll disseminate the cliff notes for the rest of us.
Well, I wanted Orbit to be like entertainment and educational. And so these
Mhm.
modules are fun. And if you want to watch them with your children, your family, your loved ones, it's not terrible. And then the main part of Orbit that you can apply it is these mission architecture guidebooks that I created. So you can say, well, cool, you could tell me all this stuff, but how do I make it happen in my own life? Like, how do I
Where's the
take all
application?
this? Yeah. And so that's where it's like the rubber hits the road. Like, you have to like decide how are you
Rubber hits
going
the
to apply
road.
that. And
Hmm.
I think that I really want to clarify that I didn't start out doing 2 hours a day. I spent years and years working 10, 12, 14-hour days. And that's why I said, well, if I could create my own world in my own life, what would it look like? I think that's a big part of it too. In module 1 in Orbit is we go through like, well, what is your Goldilocks zone?
Why do you work 14 hours a day? Yeah. What's your
Well,
why?
I understand why, but like,
Hmm.
what would you create if you could? If you could make
Hmm.
your life look like anything, what would it be? And what is that number? What do you want to do, or how do you want to help people? So for me, the Orbit community is not just like what you can get, but what can you give, and how do we create a space where we're supporting one another and helping each other grow? And I think that that part is like super exciting. And yeah, it's not 2 hours a day like, oh, I just have a clock and I stop, because if I'm inspired and if I'm working on something, then I keep working on it. But I just think that it's important. Like, I don't clock in. No one tells me what to do with my time. And if it's like low tide and I'm having a really good time with my kids, I don't come back to the computer. I think a lot of it is that like we can use technology to make it so that we don't have to spend so much time at our desk. So it's kind of
Hmm.
this like flip side idea of tech, that I don't want to sit in front of my desk. I want to go outside and have fun. So
I think it is so easy to get to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, I crushed my career goals. I'm in rooms with people I never imagined to be. And then to sit back and be like, and I'm miserable. I mean, you see it around you all the time in terms of the work that it takes. And then once you hit that goal, it's like, what's next or why? So you're saying, hey, let's really think about the why first, and then engineer it backwards so we can get there.
yeah, I think that the pattern right now is very clear. So people that understand what's going on, and the forces, that are shifting, they're going to be able to create sustainable value streams. And we're not facing retirement right now. We're facing this like completely fundamental shift in how expertise orbits through markets. And I mean, everything is changing. And so I think that like if you're not recognizing that or seeing that, that's I can't help you. But if you see it and you want to change things and you want things to be different or better, or like you have knowledge and you want to share it and you don't just want to sit at a golf course, for the next 20 years, like then I think that's where this gets really exciting, is that you can be at your beach house and you could talk to anyone around the world and you could lead teams and you can have classes and you can give talks or do all this different stuff. And I think that like that's really, really exciting if you want to still be like a part of society, but a little bit.
But on your own terms.
Yeah, on your own terms.
Yeah. So you've got a 2025 strategic guide out. Tell us about that.
Well, I put something together for your community, and this guide is pretty incredible. It's for El Rey, and it's called Beyond the Board, a 2025 strategic guide. And it's going to show your listeners who are subject matter experts exactly how to position themselves in the 2025 economy. And it's going to break down some of these patterns that we've discussed and provide a really practical blueprint for how to implement some of these strategies into their SME monetization journey. And so I really am such a big fan of what you do and how you are reshaping the workforce, and just listening to your podcast and some of these incredible people that you've had on. Do you have is there any chance that like you'll have General Mattis like on in the future?
We take every referral very seriously, and I will have our team reach out. Absolutely.
He's
It
so
sounds like
rad.
you might want to join us on that one.
He's just dreamy. I mean, honestly, like it's yes. Like no, I don't want to
get General Mathis and your audience.
He has a partner who's absolutely incredible, doing phenomenal things. I don't know her name off the top of my head, but like he's just really. I love reading what he's put out there and his what a proponent of knowledge he is. And so it's just refreshing. But yeah, so anybody who's listening, all of your listeners, particularly those who are subject matter experts, they're 55 and over. And so I have this gift for you guys. And so if you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yes, we'll link it in the show notes as well. So ping you and say, hey, I'm interested in so I heard you on El Rey, interested in Beyond the Board.
All they have to do is just DM me with El Rey, and I will send them this Beyond the Board 2025 strategic guide. It's $149 value, completely free. And I mean, I hope that I can help. And I hope that I can, spread this knowledge and make this shift a little bit better for your listeners.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. And again, check out the show notes for how to get in touch with Dr. Layla and your free For El Rey listeners guides. Before I let you go, leave us with one practical step that listeners can do today to think about their expertise journey and position themselves for that life they want.
So I would say that in space, if you miss your launch window, it's going to make it really difficult or impossible to catch up. And right now we're approaching this similar window in the expertise economy. And so if you understand how to position yourself at these new points of convergence between wisdom that you already have in AI, then you're going to thrive. And for those of you who are waiting, it's going to be increasingly difficult to catch up. And so I just want to emphasize that these patterns are really clear. In 2025, subject matter experts are either going to be riding this wave of AI or they're going to be crushed by it.
Don't miss your launch window.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.